Alafia, I'm Dr. Gloria Lattimore Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O Art of Life show. And I'm very happy to have a show entitled Growing Our Community. Everybody talks about growing the economy and growing everything else. I want to talk about growing our community. And so I have the very perfect people here to talk about that, because I have Fred Carter from Black Oak Center, and I have my dearest, wonderful friend, Toni Anderson, and she's with Girls Gone Green, which is a part of the Camp Butterfly Project. And these people are growing our community in the most meaningful ways, working with our young girls to teach them things that they need to know as women and as people who live on the planet Earth, Toni. That is just so wonderful. And Fred, for you to be doing all the work that you do around not only the environment, but some down on the ground things that we all can understand, which is the food that we eat. So I want to start with you, Fred, even though ladies are first. I do want to start with Fred because Fred has been, well, he's a farmer now, and he's been working with farmers, putting together farmers markets so that we can have access to fresh produce and other things that are pure, that are from our own people, which is a wonderful thing, because I know that one of the chains put up a farmer's market. And I thought, now how ridiculous is this? They are so far removed from any person with a real farm,
Right,
you know, but that is in our community, competing with people who actually are working for us and who need our support. So I know that you do that, and I know that when the crops are in, that, you know, this will be resumed. But right now you're working on building food clubs. And so I want you to talk about that and what the motivation is for thinking that we need to feed ourselves, or that it should be a no-brainer, but
Right.
we somehow have learned to depend on other people to do that. So why are we now taking on the responsibility of feeding ourselves?
Well, you know, the mouth is an extraordinary part of our body. Not only do our speaking feeds us, but also what we put in it. And what we've been putting in our mouth has not been feeding us. So it really came out of the commitment of my partner, which is Dr. Wright,
Jifunza, right?
Jifunza Wright, who started for her patients. She got tired of hearing this story that I cannot afford to buy healthy food, right? So she created in her office for her patients a food buying club where the patient can save as much as 40 to 50% on anything that they can buy at Whole Foods. Instead of your whole paycheck, you can come there, we collectively buy, and people come and they split up the food and everybody go home happy. So what that ended up mushrooming and developing, I say mushrooms because mushrooms are the soil that all life started on the planet with. It's called a mycelium, which is we're just like a big mushroom, right? So what mushroomed out of that was this possibility of sharing this to the whole community, right? Healthy food, people getting healed from what they eat. So we came up with a model we call the Healthy Food Hub. The Healthy Food Hub is a reverse CSA. A CSA is what they call community-supported agriculture. Instead of a farmer soliciting monies for a person to become a member of his CSA and you only get whatever he grows, we reverse that. It's the eater who designed the program to support what they want to eat. And as a result of that, it's starting to grow exponentially. It's just phenomenal. The Healthy Food Hub is a model that we're creating as a community-based organization to address what they call the food deserts in our community. It has not only the distribution of food, but what we also are doing is creating a system that would allow us to sustain our community in times of crises, a food system, and not completely rely on the existing structure to feed us. So what that includes is not only collectively buying our foods, which give us a leverage in our purchasing, but it also allows us to create a system that will integrate into the farmers. Farmers are now partners of this with us, the black farmers. And also it's going to allow us to create new farmers. See, we don't have enough farmers. So to have a sustainable system, we have to have more farmers. And not just farmers in the traditional sense, but anybody that can grow and cultivate food. That's an act of farming. That's not only urban, but also rural. So inside the food hub, we have urban farmers and rural farmers and some suburban farmers who are committed to growing food to feed the members of that group. But what we're doing now, right now we house, our first major hub is at Betty Shabazz International Charter School.
That's on the south side of
That's
Chicago.
on the south side of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have 3 campuses, about 1,000 children. And it started with the kids. It was an idea that came up where the parents got together, well, let us create this healthy food hub at the school. And it was like a fundraiser for the parent-student committee. But what has happened out of it, the children has gotten engaged. There's parents coming from all over the place want to be part of it. We got to design like a cultural environment. When you walk in, it's not just food there. It's a cultural movement that you experience, an experiential thing of the children engaged in food, learning about food, the children engaged in the math of packaging the food, measuring the foods, because we buy in bulk and we package it right at the school. And now the school is buying the food through the food hub for the students, lunchroom. And that's the real important thing, that our children and the institution itself, this is really creative. This is not going on anyplace else, from what I understand. The school now is part of the food hub, and the food hub is committed to creating a food security system in our community in partnership with the school. So that includes not only the food distribution, but it also includes creating a garden out at the school. We got 2 gardens at the school. And that started, some's been longer than 2 years, but we started one last year with the children because the kids used to come out to our Echo campus, which we call Black Oaks, in Pembroke Hawkins Park. In partnership with Betty Shabazz, we got this, we have a yurt, a 30-foot yurt. It was donated and contributed to in honor of Betty Shabazz. So the children come out and they learn about food. They take that, they call it the living classroom. So we are the living classroom, living expression at the 40 acres of the science of growing food for the school. So the hub is not just a place where we disperse food, but it's also an educational facility. There are classes, intros. We got workshops we're planning to have around that for the parents and also for the students. We hope to establish this as a way, not only that, as an economic engine, because from out of our mouths, we can create an economic renaissance. We consume billions of dollars in food, but we don't share in any of that. So from what we eat, we can create our own jobs. Not only from the growing of food, which we call a green job, which is a green job. No honorable position on the planet than the person that grows what you eat. That's like a priest. But we aren't but everything else because we've gotten away from our relationship to the land. So our children in the hub are learning how to have a much more powerful relationship to land and food. Not just the kids, but it's transgenerational. We got people from as young as 2 years old running around, playing and packaging, sampling the goods, and also doing what we call a welcoming committee. They welcome the adults as they come in and buy. And there's a lot of elders who come in who wants to be eating the highest quality of food. And most of them have experienced that in their lifetime. A lot of us don't know anything about it because the quality of the food has changed so much in the last 40 years. And so that's what Black Oaks is doing right now in terms of food. We're perfecting this model. We're going to tie it into the farmers market this summer. Now we're inside like an internal farmers market, but it's cultural based because food is part of culture. We need to know more about our culture and our relationship to the food. So the hub is this focal center where people come and culturally share the experience of food. And it also allows us to buy food at a much lower cost because we collaborate in our purchasing together. So it's what we call a reverse CSA, community-supported agriculture, but it's really community-generated agriculture, not the farmers buying and selling memberships. That's what you see a lot out here. The CSAs, that you go out, you pay $10 or whatever, $500. You don't never know what you're going to get. And if
Or
you have,
if you're going to
or
get
if you're
it.
going to get it, but your money is gone. So we got to change that model because the food should be driven from the bottom, not the top. And that's the corporate model where the corporations come and get you invested, but the people are investing in what they're doing.
Very good. Now I know that you were just sitting there; that it was just striking a chord with you, and you can either respond to that right now, or you can hold that off and let's talk about Girls Gone Green.
I think what you're doing is amazing. It's exactly. Well, I plan on calling you and definitely
Please.
bringing our girls into it. Girls Gone Green is under the umbrella of Camp Butterfly, which is an organization dedicated to the holistic development and the specific needs of African American girls ages 7 to 17. And what this wonderful woman, Nyambi Jaha Eccles, started Project Butterfly out of the need to just bring cultural awareness and address the specific needs of these girls. We found that that girls in an urban setting didn't always get what they needed from different community organizations. She wanted to specifically hone in on that. Out of that came Camp Butterfly, where every summer it was a sleepaway camp where she would take the girls to this wonderful campground called Camp Renora in Michigan, and they would spend a week there doing tons of cultural enrichment activities designed to really cultivate and get the girl to really see who she is, her potential, talk about the things that pained her, so that she can work through it and rise above and have some hope and some something that she can cling on to that's uniquely her, and build a supportive community of other girls walking the same walk so that they could be together. Out of that have been bubbling up different youth programs that we're kind of looking around and seeing that we need to have more throughout the year and in the city when we return. And about a couple years ago, I did a Camp Butterfly session out in Camp Renora, and I found my own little girl inside of me was tapped, because as a girl, I went to camp every summer, and it transformed me. When I came back to the city, I didn't see trees, I didn't see grass, I didn't see my community the same anymore. And I kept thinking, like, what can we do to bring this back? How can we bring this country connectedness that we have with this nature back to Chicago? And I approached the executive director of Camp Butterfly, Deanna Carpenter, and said, you know, I want to think about a volunteer community service piece. Like, what can we do to start getting these girls to think about bringing that connection, that nature, that thing that calmed us all down when we were out there in the country back to the city. And at the same time, another wonderful woman, Veronica Kyle, who is an environmental professional. She's traveled all over the world. Her and her husband lived in South Africa and did some working with youth in environmental awareness to bring back natural food and teaching these young African girls how to care for the land. She had this idea of Girls Gone Green and had approached Niambi and Deanna at the same time that I was talking to them about what can we do. And out of that, this whole idea of an environmental awareness program to teach girls our inherent connection with the earth. We have this natural relationship that we've kind of forgotten about because we've gotten away from food.
Yes.
We've gotten away from our relationship with how we acquire things as a society. We don't know where our clothes come from. We don't mend. We don't, you know, we don't garden.
Right.
We don't even know half the time where our, you know, we don't even have a connection with an apple anymore because we're not even eating it, much less knowing where it comes from. So we sat down together and thought, like, how can we bridge not just the environmental awareness, because everybody's going green and it's part of our relationship with society now. Everybody's talking about what does it mean to go green, but specifically this conversation has been kind of left out of the African American community. We don't talk about these things, and you know, we've got a list of stuff that kind of you know, outweighs the priority of what being environmental in our community really means. So we wanted to not just talk about recycling and talk about, you know, turning lights off, but we really wanted to bring it back to the cultivation of the girl and helping her understand that the state of her is a natural extension of what the state of the earth is. So when we take care of ourselves, we take care of the earth, and you can't hurt what you care about. And also teaching her that this is within you. We have an indigenous relationship. Indigenous women all over the planet have a natural relationship with the earth when it comes to taking advantages out of the natural state of things. We have, you know, following the natural laws of the seasons, following the natural laws of sunrises and sunsets, and understanding what that ebb and flow is, and being in a position to benefit from it, because we don't really have to go outside of the community and go outside to these different organizations, and I'll say, you know, stores to get what we need. When I was younger, you didn't go get a new pair of socks. You mended the socks that you had. Getting away from this immediate gratification and understanding that recycling is something as simple as creating something that you have no more use for and turning it into something that you will now love and that you created yourself. And so basically, Girls Gone Green is a program where we're striving to bring this love of the earth and this love for yourself and your community together.
Well, you know, it sounds also very much like you're breeding resourcefulness.
Exactly.
That because that's what we must be as a people. Whether or not we're wealthy or not, we need to be resourceful. When I think about the fact that I'm older, I'm glad I am, because I lived during a time when my father was a farmer. And I've spent a lot of time looking at the things that we did, for example, the planting, the cultivation, the harvesting, the drawing of water from a well, the milking of cows, the feeding of chickens, the picking of fruit and berries for the mothers to can, the churning of milk to turn it into butter, you know, the setting the milk can out for them to come and pick up and take it someplace to the dairy to be pasteurized. All of this kind of stuff, an outhouse, you know, cultivating the garden with the manure from the cows and the horses, you know, riding in a wagon or riding on a flat that was pulled by a horse down to the field to work. So I had that experience.
Yes.
And I watched people make things.
Yes.
You know, I watched women make quilts. We made underwear from flour sacks, you know, so we had, everything, nothing was thrown away.
Right.
We didn't have garbage pickup because we didn't have garbage, you know. It's hard to believe that you
Right.
could live.
Yeah.
We didn't have anything in a can.
Right.
Everything was in glass mason jars that was put up for the fall. Anything that was left over from dinner went to the hog pen. And it was, you know, pigs these days are getting all kinds of stuff with hormones
Right.
and growth accelerators in it. We didn't have that. We fed, the pigs ate what we ate, and so consequently, if we ate the pigs, we were eating an extension of what we already ate in the first place. If there was a slaughter, there were no nitrates put in the meat to turn it into something that looked like it had been smoked. It was actually smoked in a smoke
Right.
house
Right.
with real hickory wood, you know.
Right.
And we walked miles to get the mail, you know, miles to go to class, you know. And so you had exercise, you know, you had the joy of fishing and getting fish right out of the pond and knowing that you did it. You know, you had the joy of it, and I called it joy. I know that it was hard work, but it was joyful to be able to brag how much of anything you had picked, pails of berries, you know, mounds of cotton, or how much corn. Of course, I was always accused of chopping down more corn plants than I did weeds.
Right.
The goal was to take the weeds from around the corn, but I couldn't always decide which one was the weed and which one was the young plant. But I'm saying that I got to see biscuits get made.
Right.
I got to see corn get ground and made. We went down to the mill. We saw the corn ground into cornmeal and grits. We saw flour milled. You know, we we where flour and cornmeal came from. We saw how bread was made. You know, we took stuff out of a garden, we cleaned it and put it in a pot. You know, we made fires in a pot-belly stove. And we couldn't regulate the temperature, but no biscuits ever came out of there wrong. No pound cakes ever came out wrong. Anything that Southern women decided they were going to bake was going to come out the way they intended for it to be.
Right.
So we were really very self-sufficient. Now, we didn't have walk-in closets because we didn't have that many clothes.
Right.
It was a whole lot of us, but we didn't have enough clothes to require a walk-in closet. And we, like I said, we walked great distances to everything but that was just part of what you did
And
if you were
stories.
going someplace.
Stories like that are disappearing.
Yes.
Because, you know, I can remember as a young girl, my mom, my great-great-grandparents had a farm in Columbia, Arkansas. And back then, there was this wave of children who went south every summer to spend time with their families. And that's just what you did when you were coming up. You got out of school, there was no after-school care, there was none of that summer program stuff that happens now. You went down south and you spent time with your families. My mom told me that she would stand in the middle of the land, and as far as her eye could see in every direction, that was their property. That was the farm, and they would steal knives out of the kitchen and go way out in the middle of the watermelon patch and,
Right.
and sneak watermelon, and
Right.
she'd get in trouble. And when I was younger, I think what she was trying to do for me is she was trying to give me that experience. My great-grandparents, of course, passed away when she was younger, and land got divided, and so we didn't have that experience, but she sent us to camp, sleepaway camp, every single summer we would go. The first time I laid down under trees and saw a sun shining through them, I was transformed. I was, I had quiet, I had a connection, and I heard my voice and my spirit.
And you heard birds.
And I heard birds, and birds woke us up every morning. There were crows,
Right, right.
Screaming from the trees every day. We saw frogs, we played on Tarzan ropes and, swung across creeks and stuff. And those experiences, when I came back to the city, I had a connection to the land that no one could take away. I cared about a piece of garbage sitting on a lawn, whether that lawn was in front of my home or was down the block. This was my community. This is what I cared about. So I cared that it looked clean. I wanted to rub the dogs. I wanted to look up at the trees. And because we live in communities that are so crime infested, I could go out in my yard when I was younger and make mud pies with the girls down the block because, and we didn't even realize that was nurturing us. That was us we didn't need Nintendo, we didn't need all Wii games and all the things that keep kids inside and on computers and in all this technology. It's because we're afraid to go out into our communities. We don't have that connection with the earth. So this, I call it nature deprivation, is what, is leading to the obesity, is leading to, it gives us, it builds walls and barriers between us. So I feel Girls Gone Green is an opportunity for us to give back what we are missing from our own, my childhood, my mother's childhood. Give these girls a safe place to be, opportunities for them to have that connection with the land so that they can start caring for themselves, caring about what they put in their bodies, caring about where food comes from, teaching them how they can use the things from the earth and our environment to beautify instead of going to the market and buying expensive creams and all of that. So I feel that this program is our ability to give back give back a generation of things that have been missing from our communities for so long.
To restore us to wholeness.
To restore us to wholeness.
Because we're fragmented.
Exactly.
Our children are so disconnected. We've had, once we had a group of kids out there at Black Oaks. I was so moved. Some of them have never been to the park. And when they were supposed to have been special ed, special children. And boy, we thought we was going to have a problem. A lot of 100 special children. But as soon as those children got on the land, something shifted. So I'm saying that our disconnect from the land has a direct effect on the crime. And when we were younger, we stayed in the park. Now, I lived on the west side. We'd go right across the street to Douglas Park,
And I lived across the street from Washington Park when we came here.
Yeah. So, and we came from Mississippi, so there was always this connection to the land. Now there's no connection to the land. It's not even important. We talk about green, but the green that we mostly talk about is some technology, but not about the earth. They call it environmental stuff. I went to a conference when we said we don't want that. We don't want that environmental stuff. We want that green stuff, the green dollars, But it's the land itself that restores our ability to be whole. And without that connection, it allows us to get disconnected to each other. It's the land where life and the heaven meets is on the land. And the more we get engaged with it, the more we find our relationship to each other. And our children, most definitely, need that.
The other thing I've thought about is that we didn't have any machines.
Right.
We washed in a tin tub in the yard. The soap was made we made the soap, and we had a rub board, and there was a fire built under this tub that made the water hot, because well water is very cold.
Yes.
And we made the water hot, and then if we had a need to, although clothes didn't get dirt, like, because the soil, everything was purer. The
Right.
air was cleaner, the water was purer, and so was the soil. So
Right.
even if you got your clothes dirty, the dirt came right out.
Right,
If you had
right.
anything that was really stubborn, you might have to boil it, or you might have to scrub it against a rub board. And your dryer was a clothesline stretched across the yard where you hung stuff up, and your bleach was the sun. Your sheets were just so brilliantly white you could hardly stand to take them down, you know, because they just be so gleaming white. So white clothes were gleaming white, and colored clothes kept their color forever. And we had our clothes forever. You know, we handed down stuff. And there was no shame, because all the families did that. Every child who outgrew something gave it to the next child, either in that household or in some nearby household, who could fit those things.
Right.
And we wore things out. We wore holes in the bottom of shoes and then put cardboard in the bottom to get the little more wear out before we could get some more shoes. The thing is that you learn your strengths and weaknesses, because living on a farm is not easy. You're not gonna be sleeping late. You're not gonna stay up all night playing any video games, because you'll be glad to go to bed, because you're gonna be waking up with the sun. The rooster's gonna crow. Everybody out of the pool.
Right.
You gonna come out of that house, and you have, no matter what your size was, you had something to do. So you got up early in the morning. You got up when the energy of the sun helped you up.
Right, you rose with her.
And then you had all this vigor and all this vitality, and you worked very, very hard. So you were well developed. You couldn't be obese, because you didn't get no chance to sit around
Right.
and grow all those fat cells. So it was, you found out what you can do. You take the average urban child to the country and tell him to walk 5 miles. He would just look that far away and say, I can't do that.
Right.
Children need to learn
Yes.
that they don't know their strength because they haven't developed their strength. They need to have to do something, like get up at dawn, go to bed at what you gonna stay up for? We didn't have electricity in the house where I was living.
Right.
We had the lamps, the kerosene lamps, that when after it got dark and a little reading was done, then the kerosene lamps were blown out, and it was pitch dark. It wasn't a television playing, wasn't a radio playing, wasn't nothing playing, and you were going to bed and go to sleep. So you got all the rest you needed, all the exercise you needed, all the pure drinking water, all the clean air, all the pure food, all the stuff that you yourself had a hand in growing. And it gave you the sense of powerfulness, which is what I contend is the reason why you get people coming here from the South. They always outdistance people who are already in urban centers. If you were born and raised here, a brother can come out of Mississippi, he'll buy a house before you. He'll do everything before you, because he understands how to do things.
Right.
He knows how to get stuff done. You just take it for granted because you've been raised in an urban center that you rent an apartment.
Right,
You rely on other people to own property, and then you share the property they own. You rely on other people to provide you with a food source, and then you share in the food source. They provide, but not equitably.
Right.
It's not like you live in a co-op and everybody owns this building together and we each pay a part of the expense of maintaining the property. No, this person is the landlord, the sole owner, and everybody else is a tenant, and they're not only paying the cost of the ownership of the property, but they're also paying some profit to the landlord who had good credit.
Right.
So we have got to grow our community back to the cooperative thing. That's what's green
Yes.
about how our people
Right,
lived,
right.
was that we actually lived in communities, we actually helped each other in times of need. Nobody had very much of anything, but if a house burned down, that house was rebuilt. And if somebody needed somebody when they in childbirth, if somebody needed somebody to deliver that baby or to come and help take care of the mother till she was on her feet again, you better believe there would be people who would be there. And the church was an omni institution. It was not just to save your soul, but it was also to sustain you while you were
Right,
here.
right. When I hear you say that, when we first moved out, we were off grid at Black Oaks, right? And we got one section, we call it the zone of technology. There's a television, computers and all that in one building. But what I've noticed, where we sleep, where we eat in the other complexes, there's no technology. There's no electrical wires running through. And what I've noticed, when I come in the city and sometimes I stay at my mother's now that we've moved completely out, it's difficult for me to sleep. Because when you start sleeping in a non-technical environment, it's something that radiates from the power that surges through these lines that disrupt your sleeping pattern, but you don't know it. So, of course, you get deeper sleep. And even the lighting. So the bath part, I never got it. You know, my son's first bath was in a big tub. Because we off grid. And it was the most delightful experience that he ever had. The guy just went crazy. Sitting in the tub, taking a bath.
You got to heat the water on the stove.
Heat the water,
and then pour it in the tub and hope this don't get cold before you get to the next batch of water.
And we got you mentioned we got a Amish stove. We cook and heat with wood mostly. And so there's a big old Amish stove. We bake in it. We boil water. We heat the building. It's a wonderful experience, heating with natural fuels. So I really like how do we get back to that? Right. How do we access those primal? Even taking a shower outside is phenomenal when you can look up at the sky. It's just completely different than being in an enclosed building and have no connection to nature. I know in the wintertime that's challenging, but how do we get to that? I say we can get to that because we can redesign our living environment in ways that allows us to have greater access to the environment. We can create micro pockets right in the city where food is everywhere, but it doesn't look like it's anywhere. It's like you can design a garden that doesn't look like a farm, but it's an edible garden. That's how this country was before the European came here. Before the European came to the United States, they call United States now, it was like a Garden of Eden. Food was everywhere. No matter where you were, food was everywhere. And what we've just acknowledged that wasn't accidental. The indigenous people designed it that way. And there were millions of human beings here. So what I'm saying, we can go back and learn those practices of our indigenous ancestors. They call that permaculture now. We can go back and learn those practices and redesign our existing environment to support us and support life, because right now it doesn't. So we can begin to recreate urban settings. Yes, it's great you can go out to country, you get a country experience, but you can have that in the city. You can actually create a safe space that express what we're talking about now. And it's amazing how I've been in a place like that, and when people walk into that area, it's like a sacred, it creates a certain energy about itself. Something happened to you when you walk in a place that's designed for you to have a relationship with the earth. You can eat, You can have community in that space. We did a small garden at Trinity last summer. That was part of the things wrong with the farmers market.
Trinity
United
Church of Christ on 95th Street.
We came up with a design that included, and we haven't quite completed the whole design yet. We started phase 1, that would allow us an edible garden, but it didn't look like a farm. But it was designed in a way where people can commune and be community engagement inside the space. So we can create those kind of places no matter where we're at. And that's one way we can access, again, without having to travel 50 or 60 miles in the environment that we're in. So like you said, where we are, we can transform our environment.
And we can transform ourselves.
Transform ourselves.
And when you start with girls as young as 7, when you start to plant the seeds and when you start to draw forth out of them their natural, as you point out, it's in our DNA.
Yes.
You know, that natural side. When you start looking at the topography of Europe and looking at the topography of Africa and of this part of North America, all the old movies you ever saw, you saw cobblestone streets.
Yes.
You saw a lot of pavement, you know, where you saw green was where they put castles and mansions that the peasants didn't have access to unless they were laborers on those on those estates.
Right.
So the land was not something that the average European was accustomed to sharing unless he was a serf or a peasant. It wasn't something that he had a long history with. But we grew up in a natural garden. Our ancestors grew up in a natural garden. You can't, Africa's too big, you can't pave it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So
Not enough
you
cement.
right. So we've had this long history with the soil, with the plants. And the thing I'd like to see is for us to understand that our children cannot fully develop unless they have at least some exposure.
Exactly.
Right.
You have got to take children out of urban centers. They have to leave urban centers. They have to go to rural areas where they can see and experience land and vegetation and wildlife and animal life. They need to do that. And what I really would like is not only for them to go out to rural areas, but I'd like to see them leave the country. The world has got to be larger for our children.
Right.
They
Exactly.
cannot develop a perspective, a global perspective in their block.
Right.
It can't be done. So we have to begin to have plans for our children's development, and we have to sort of think in terms of moving away from going down to the local box store and buying everything electronic in there, trying to entertain them, because very soon they come back to you and they're still bored.
Yes,
You know,
Right.
you buy them every new thing that comes out, and in a little bit they're back in your face because they don't know what to do with themselves. Well, there's plenty to do if you are doing something constructive and useful. So I'm glad that Girls Gone Green, and you have something on Saturdays. You'll start on the first phase will start Saturday, March 20th.
Yes.
And it'll go through Saturday, August 21st. And actually, it'll be in the city at the Butterfly House, which is at 3543 South Indiana.
Yes.
Yeah, and then there's a program fee. But the thing is, you're helping girls to heal the planet through awareness, advocacy, and action. And I'll bet anything that you would take sponsors.
Yes.
You have some girls who can't afford
And we
to
have
enroll
scholarships
in the
available.
program.
We have scholarships available for those girls. donations and sponsorships, volunteering of any kind. We are our doors are wide open. We will turn no girl away for her inability to not afford the program fee.
Right.
It's just,
And that's a good place for seniors. You know, it's a very
Yes.
good place for
Yes.
seniors who are bored with their existence to go and get in touch. I love young people. They just they keep you alive. They bring a perspective. My 6-year-old granddaughter just discovered that I was a teacher. She couldn't believe it. She ran to her mother and she had to get proof. Was it true? And then she made me name some of my students and tell her what they were doing. You know, since I taught them, you know, they should all be famous people. So anyway,
and that mentoring and that connection is something that our girls are desperate for. They need that. They need that nurturing. They need that love. They need those skills. You know, our elders have tons of knowledge around things that we, younger generation, don't really understand. We don't cook for ourselves. We don't mend. We don't sew. We don't make the quilts. We don't knit. These are things that we would love. Because as you tap into that creative, it's about sustaining yourself and understand what your creativity is. But like you said, once you realize that you have all this power to create and reuse and reduce and recycle, once you understand all these tools that are out there, you know, you don't see garbage anymore. You don't see old clothes that you can't wear, and you don't get bored. Like you said, you go and you figure out things.
There's time in the day.
There's not enough time in the day to create once you tap into that part of yourself that is that powerhouse of creativity, and you look around at your environment and you see it with a new lens. You don't see destruction, you see life and creativity. And that's something that our elders are gifted at naturally. So we would welcome, you know, the elders of the community to come and work with our girls.
And elders bring the other element, which is by telling children about how life was back in the day.
Exactly.
It gives them, it sparks their imagination, because they can't imagine, really?
The stories.
You know, they can't imagine you really didn't have television, you know?
You had to boil your water?
Yeah, was there really a time when you had, so if you can imagine that people ever lived like that, then of course you can go back and imagine kings and queens of Africa that ruled the Nile and studied the stars and charted the course of the universe and all of that. But you know, just if you can imagine another way of living, then you can imagine a way that is different from the way you live right now. You don't have to want to necessarily go back. You can want to go forward and say, oh, you know, I'd like to live in a world, or I'd like to live in a community where this was this way, and this was, why does this, you can raise questions. Why does this have to be this way? It doesn't have to be this way. It can be different. I can be the one, you know, to start it. So I think that it's wonderful that you have found some work that you enjoy, you know, that you do because it's the work that you love, and that the work that you do has the potential for the growth, you know, because you do it and then you doing it for these people, and these people do other, you know, will introduce other people. Now, can people come and learn how to start a food buying club from your example, so that if they want to do it in their block club or their church?
That's the intent. The intent, our commitment is to have it all over the place. Just imagine if it was 10,000 of us in one conversation around our food, what that would do. That's very powerful. And the missing link, I say, are our women. Because it's the women that's driving the market, that have the food up. Who sourced it, created it, and it's something that we can wrap our arms around the food. We can't possibly do the technology, but our food, we have to grab. And out of the food comes everything, clothing, every material that you talked about earlier about, we made everything. we made everything, but we had a direct relationship of where that was sourced from.
Right.
We did a class with some children around agriculture. And one component in the class was about what products come from the earth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't know that. Children don't know that everything that they're wearing comes from the plants,
Mm-hmm.
most of it. If it didn't come from a plant, it came somewhere from
A derivative.
derivative.
Mm-hmm.
So food is it's everything.
Mm-hmm.
From our food, we created housing from the trees. From the trees, we created ecosystems because the trees are like pumps. The trees are like the filters of the planet. And our relationship to that was one. And then our indigenous culture, the distinction that it was, we never saw ourselves separate from that.
Mm-hmm.
Like the other show, Hunter was talking about, we were not stewards,
Mm-hmm.
but we were part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this worldview, it's like we say, it's two worldviews. One that dominates the world now, that we all are separate. And that's our breakdown in our community. We got it that we're separate from each other, right? But that comes from our lack of connectedness to the planet.
Right.
We are absolutely inseparable, and our ancestors knew that. They knew that they were the planet.
Mm-hmm.
They called us pagans,
Mm-hmm.
okay? That was really, the pagan was the one who honored the life in the rock,
Mm-hmm.
but also honored life in the planets
Mm-hmm.
and the animals. You got this film out now called The Avatar. It's the hottest thing going now because
Mm-hmm.
that's all indigenousness, most of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the relationship to the earth. And the part that was very moving to me in that movie, when the guy said, there's nothing you got that they want.
Mm-hmm.
When we access our indigenous wisdom, there's nothing that
Anybody has.
Exactly.
has that we want. There's no wants
Mm-hmm.
because we're complete. So our children have been captured by corporate forces.
We delivered our children
We
to
gave
Yeah.
them away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we have to
Redirect them.
Flip that over.
right call them in.
Right.
You know, but you know we of course are the recipients of a long line of what people call miseducation.
Right.
You know, we've got a lot of disinformation and misinformation,
Right.
and we're learning, or if we haven't learned it, we will learn it because truth. You know, the King had a million quotations about truth crushed to the earth will rise
Right,
again.
right.
You cannot hold reality back, and you cannot crush truth. And we will eventually learn that we are living empty lives that don't really lead anywhere, that don't really have the value that, don't really express the value that they have. They have value, but the value is not being expressed in the way of life that
Right.
we have chosen. And that's because we are letting the tail wag the dog.
Yeah.
The
somebody-
students are teaching the teachers. We are the earth's first teachers. We were here, we know. We studied, we know. We have all the reasons in the world to be teaching other people, not the other way around. And so we are learning some things that are not useful for us and not useful for the planet. We're looking at what this way of life is leading toward. You know, you looking at a polar bear sitting on a block of ice, not much bigger than himself. You know,
Right.
what are you saying? These people have not been stewards, because if they had been, you would not have the environmental events that we are seeing. And consequently, you can't keep going down that road with them. You have to, if they want to keep going down that road, you leave them to go down that road, but you have to detour.
Right.
You have to begin to follow a different path. And you have to be confident that you're on the right path. Even when you cannot see what's at the end of that
Don't see
path,
it.
you just have to have confidence that you are on a path that leads toward life
Yes.
and not on a path that leads toward the opposite.
It's very revolutionary.
So I'm happy. I'm Toni Anderson. I'm real happy about Girls Gone Green, and I'm very happy that Black Oak Center is doing so much and trying so hard to raise our level of awareness. I have to tell this audience about this free store that they have. I hope I saved it. There's a free store. It's at 400 South Peoria Street in Chicago. Everything is free. You take things that you don't want and you give them to the people, and then you take back whatever you want.
That's it.
And it's free. 400 South Peoria Street, January 26th through March the 6th, Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., Saturday, 12 to 6. And on Thursdays, they're open late till 8 p.m. So it's a free store. Get to that. Figure that out. That there are actually people in the world who are not seeking profit. They just know we have a whole lot of things warehoused in our homes that we don't need and that we could very easily just don't try to put them in a consignment shop and get a few dollars. You know, don't try to figure out how you can profit from something you've already had full use of, but give it away and let somebody else benefit from it. And if there's something there that you need, then you are at liberty to take it. I think it's a wonderful concept.
It's great.
Right.
Yep.
It's certainly an organic one.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes,
You know.
and that certainly is sustainable, isn't
that's
it?
most
Exactly.
sustainable.
Talk about sustainability.
That's the perfect.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Fred Carter.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Toni Anderson.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to coming down there one of those Saturdays and meet some of these girls.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you.
Right. Are you not-for-profit?
Yes.
Okay, so then I can tell your phone number. It's 312-328-0800. Are you not-for-profit?
Yes, I am.
I can tell your phone number.
Yes, it can.
You tell it.
773-410-3446.
Okay. So now you have all the information you need to get free stuff, to get girls into a program where they can learn how to be holistic young ladies, and where you can get information on how to start or join a food buying club, and therefore end your dependence on things that are not altogether dependable and not always dependable anyway.
Yes.
Okay.
Becoming less reliable.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Well, do for self was, you
Yes.
know, I mean, how many people did we need to tell us that? The Honorable Marcus Garvey, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Martin Delaney. I mean, we've had so much encouragement.